Tuesday, November 7th. The meteorological reports requested by Hitler are unfavorable. The Nazi leader wanted to begin the Western invasion on the 12th of the month, but the Luftwaffe needs a week of good weather in order to achieve maximum effectiveness in lightning war, and the Wehrmacht cannot risk their tanks getting bogged down in mud. To these factors are added the shortage of daylight hours and the lack of enthusiasm on the part of Army officers to begin the operation, as General von Brauchitsch has been at pains to make clear to the Nazi leader. Hitler has no alternative but to postpone Operation Gelb. The governments of Britain and France have been informed of the invasion date of the 12th by double agents. Their sources are General Hans Oster, deputy head of the German military intelligence service Abwehr under Admiral Canaris, and his agent A54, Paul Thummel, who also works as an informer for the Czech government in exile in London. The constant Soviet threats to the Finns in the negotiations in Moscow bear fruit. The Finnish delegation is willing to cede land in return for peace. However, Field Marshal Carl Gustav Mannerheim opposes the deal and denies authority to his country's delegation. Wednesday, November 8th. Hitler is in Munich to celebrate the 16th anniversary of the attempted putsch against the government of Bavaria. In the Burger Braukeller beer hall at 8:10 p.m., the Führer begins his speech accusing the British of hating Germany because it achieved in a short time what Britain had taken centuries to obtain. At 9:12 p.m., some 20 minutes ahead of schedule, Hitler leaves the beer hall due to the bad weather and the need to return to Berlin to hold a meeting with the High Command of the Armed Forces and set a new date for the invasion of Western Europe. At 9:20 p.m., 8 minutes after Hitler left the hall, a bomb placed by Johann Georg Elser inside a column close to the rostrum where the Nazi leader was speaking explodes. 7 people are killed and 60 injured, but Hitler is on the train on his way to the capital of the Reich. Upon hearing the news, he exclaims, "Now I am certain I am protected by divine providence." 36-year-old communist sympathizer Elser, who had worked in a watch factory, had been freed some days earlier from Dachau concentration camp. He is detained at a frontier post at Constanza as he tries to flee Germany for Switzerland, and after being interrogated by the Gestapo, he will be sent to Sachsenhausen camp, where he is known as Hitler's private prisoner. Thursday, November 9th. Following the failed attempt on his life in Munich, Hitler makes an exultant appearance before members of his government. In Venlo, the Dutch town close to the border with Germany, Nazi special forces capture 2 British agents. Major Richard Stevens and Captain Sigismund Best fall into the hands of the enemy, while Lieutenant Dirk Klopp of the Dutch Secret Service is killed in the skirmish. The operation, executed under the orders of Heinrich Himmler and led by the young SS agent Alfred Naujax, who had carried out the supposed Polish attack against Gleiwitz radio station at the start of the war, has the objective of undermining Dutch neutrality and obtaining information on British Secret Service activity in Germany and other countries. The British agents are imprisoned and tortured in Sachsenhausen camp, and later in Dachau. Their confessions enable the Gestapo and the SS to arrest most of the network of Allied spies inside the Third Reich. In Warsaw, more than 1,000 intellectuals are arrested by the SS and sent to concentration camps. Although Hitler has postponed the invasion of Western Europe, representatives of the Allied governments meet in Paris to discuss a defense strategy. Meanwhile, Holland continues to flood the border area with Germany. Friday, November 10th. With Finland refusing to give in to Soviet territorial demands, the tension between the two countries increases. Stalin sees the war in Europe as an opportunity to satisfy Russian dreams of expansion and seek a new exit to the sea. In Berlin, German Foreign Minister Joachim Ribbentrop, who was the ambassador in London between 1936 and 1938, and is one of the most fervent supporters of Hitler's expansionism, has no scruples about lying on the radio. He announces that the Third Reich will respect the neutrality of Belgium and Holland. Hitler, proud of the operation that has netted 2 British agents, awards the Iron Cross to one of its organizers, Helmut Nochen. Meanwhile, in the Lublin district of Poland, Odilo Globocnik is named chief of police and head of the local SS.
War has at all times called for
in Britain, from Buckingham Palace, Princess Elizabeth encourages British women to fill the posts made vacant by men joining the armed forces.
Suffered constant anxiety for their dear ones.
Saturday, November 11th. The date when Poles celebrate their independence after the First World War has become a day of great sadness this year. German and Russian invaders continue to assassinate Polish people. In the prison of Wejherowo, members of an SS unit force 350 Polish workers transferred from Gdynia to dig their own grave, and, amid threats and laughter, shoot them while they stand on the edge so that their bodies fall into the common grave, with those not killed being buried alive afterwards by other prisoners. In Paris, Colonel Charles de Gaulle, a critic of the government's policy of defense, whose ideas and writings have earned him enemies within the armed forces, closely analyzes the Wehrmacht's tactics of the invasion of Poland. De Gaulle urges the National Defense Council to rapidly mechanize the army and organize tanks into armored divisions, but his suggestions are ignored, and General Maurice Gamelin prefers to keep the tanks in a supporting role, dispersed among different infantry units. The feeling that war is imminent spreads through all the countries of Western Europe. The Belgian government orders all the roads to be cleared to facilitate the arrival of the French army, while in Holland, the authorities continue to flood the border areas with Germany. Sunday, November 12th. Heinrich Himmler is convinced that the recent attempt on Hitler's life was the work of the British Secret Service. Under Goebbels' direction, the German media tries to convince the population that the hand of Churchill was behind the act. The climate of anti-British feeling and exaltation of the Nazi leader is used to arrest thousands of Jews and opponents throughout Germany and the occupied countries. Moscow delivers an ultimatum to the Finnish government, demanding the port of Hango and the islands close to Leningrad be handed over. The Soviets also demand the destruction of fortified areas, especially that of Mannerheim, which extends 125 kilometers along the Russian border. In return, Stalin is willing to transfer the Soviet Karelia area to Finland. In the Sea War, Dönitz tells Hitler that the U-Boot-Waffe must have more units. The majority of models have fulfilled expectations, especially the medium-sized Type 7 submarines, which have a greater range of action than foreseen.